wake me up to another good morning, time to go.
Are you ready to explore God's wild and wonderful world? Welcome to the Nat Theo podcast. I'm your host, Erin Lynham. I'm a certified master naturalist, Bible teacher, and author, and I am so excited to dive into God's written word, the Bible, and His created world with you. Last summer, my family, along with good friends of ours, went camping together in the Black Hills of South Dakota. As we explored Custer State Park, I felt like we were stepping back in time. One evening, right as the sun was setting and the hills were glowing with light, we drove through a prairie with hundreds of American bison, and there were even baby calf bison all around, running and jumping and playing with each other. It was an incredible experience, and today we are learning all about this amazing animal. Today's lesson is inspired by a listener, 5-year-old Brooks, who asked this great question.
Hi, I am Brooks. I am 5 years old. I live in Omaha, Nebraska. And do you think God forgave the settlers when they almost made the bison extinct and would hunt them from trains?
What a wonderful and important question. Brooks wants to know if I think that God would forgive the settlers that hunted the bison from trains and almost hunted them to extinction. As you might guess from this question, today's topic is a bit of a hard one. And for younger listeners, this might be a good lesson to listen to with your parents as we tackle a tough topic. However, bison are an amazing creature that God designed, and I am so excited to share about them with you. And their story is very important. So Brooks, thank you for the wonderful question. Have you ever seen an American bison? Today we will learn all about them and their incredible comeback story. Here is our trail map.
Are you ready?
We are going to learn what is a bison and why do they have 4 stomachs? And what is the difference between a bison and buffalo? We will learn why did bison almost go extinct and how did they make a comeback? And finally, we will answer the question, would God forgive those who hunted bison to near extinction? Before we hit the trail, let's thank our sponsor that made this lesson possible. Do you love nature and science? Do you enjoy conducting science experiments? Unleash your creativity and your curiosity by participating in Apologia's Homeschool Science Fair. You can submit a video of your science experiment by Friday, April 25th, 2025 for a chance to win first, second, or third prize in your grade division. You can enter at apologia.com/science fair. There is no end to exploring God's creation with Apologia. Explore Apologia's science curriculum and join the science fair at apologia.com. All right, listeners, here is our trivia question. How much does an adult male bison weigh? Take a guess and we will find out at the end of our lesson. And Nat Theo Club members, be sure to click play on the bonus video after this lesson to learn why bison are great athletes. Before we hear the incredible story of the American bison, we should probably explore what a bison is and how it is different from a buffalo, because you have probably heard this animal called by both names. The animal we are learning about today that once roamed across the American West by the millions is an American bison. Although they are often called buffalo, they are not buffalo at all. First, let's look at a big similarity between bison and buffalo. Bison and buffalo are in the same family of animals called bovidae. Bovidae are cloven-hoofed ruminant mammals.
What?
What I just said might have sounded like a foreign language. Let's break it down. First, Bovidae are cloven-hoofed. Cloven-hoofed means they have a divided hoof with two distinct points that look like toes divided in the middle. So this is very different from, say, a horse's hoof that is one large solid disc. Bovidae are also ruminant animals. Ruminant refers to the very unique way that these animals eat. Animals that are ruminants have 4 compartments or sections of their stomach. When they eat, say, a bunch of grass, that food goes into the first 2 compartments. Bacteria and other living organisms inside their stomach get to work breaking down that food. Now, I know this might sound a little bit gross, but the animal later brings that food back up from its stomach into its mouth and continues chewing. That food is now called cud. The animal continues chewing the cud, breaking it down into a mush. They swallow that mush, which then returns to the first and second compartments of the stomach for more digestion. Next, the mush continues into the third compartment, where water is removed from the mush. This compartment acts a little bit like a filter. Finally, what is left moves into the fourth compartment, where the animal finishes digesting its meal. Now, that is a lot going on just to eat lunch, isn't it? It might seem complicated, but this is simply how God created these amazing animals to digest their food and get all of the nutrients that they need from that food. So, Bovidae have cloven hooves, and they are ruminants. And lastly, they are mammals. Now, we have looked at many mammals in the past. Can you remember anything about them? Here are things that are true of mammals. Mammals have hair or fur. They are warm-blooded, meaning their bodies can regulate or change temperature by a little bit to stay at a consistently warm temperature. They are vertebrates, meaning they have a backbone. Almost all of them have live births. This means that they birth a baby, not an egg. And mama mammals feed their babies with milk from their bodies. So both American bison and buffalo are in the Bovidae family. This means they both have cloven hooves, they are ruminants with 4 stomach compartments, and they are mammals. Now let's look at some key differences between them. First, let's look at where they live. Bison are native to America and Europe, while true buffalo are native to Africa and Asia. Secondly, bison and buffalo have very different body shapes. Although they are both very large mammals, bison that roamed the American West have a very large hump at their shoulders, while buffalo do not. Bison also have much larger heads than buffalo. And although both bison and buffalo have horns, they look very different. Horns on individual animals and species can differ, but in most cases, a bison's horns are short and sharp, and they are in the shape of a crescent pointing up from their heads, while buffalo horns are much longer and they kind of swoop down around the animal's face and then back up into a point at the end. Finally, bison have beards and buffalo are beardless. So if you are traveling across the American West and come across a herd of large, humped animals with short horns that are in the shape of a crescent, you are probably seeing the American bison. If, however, you are on an African safari or at a zoo and see a cow-like animal with long, curving horns, you are probably looking at a buffalo. Now that we understand what a bison is, let's travel back in time and learn about their incredible story, including why they almost went extinct. American bison used to be one of the most common animals across the prairies and plains of the western United States. They could be found in herds of several thousand bison traveling together. Explorers talked about seeing bison running across the rolling hills and it looking like this moving carpet where all you could see anywhere was bison running together in their herds. The ground would shake and make a thundering sound at the pounding of their hooves. Bison are considered a keystone species. A keystone species is a type of creature or plant that is very important for the other creatures and plants around it. A keystone species supports other living things and is necessary to help them live and do well. So bison made it possible for many other creatures to live and thrive on the prairies. One way that they helped was by rolling or wallowing in the grass. When they did this, they created these mini wetland ecosystems where water would collect for other creatures and plants. And when they rolled, they also picked up and then later dispersed seeds from grasses and flowers. In their own very unique way, bison are pollinators. Also, when bison passed away, all the nutrients from their bodies were used by other creatures, or even went back into the soil to help grow new plants. Now, bison were not only helpful to other creatures and plants, but also for people. Native Americans used bison for meat, for nutrition, and their furs to keep warm, and they used their skins to create teepees, along with their bones for tools and jewelry. So American bison were very important and useful. This brings us to the sad part of the story. In the 1800s, when American bison began being overhunted and they nearly went extinct. Do you know what extinct means? Extinct means that a creature is no longer living on Earth. There are no more of its species. Listener, listen closely. Before the 1800s, there were around 60 million bison, but they were hunted and killed to the point that there were only around 500 to 1,000 bison left. Now, you might rightfully be asking, why did this happen? There were a few reasons why bison were hunted nearly to extinction. The first was market demand. People wanted to purchase bison hides. So bison were overhunted or hunted way too much simply for their hides of thick fur. This was very sad because often their meat was left and much of it went to waste. So this means that humans did not even benefit from the nutrition in the meat as it was left to rot in the sun. Secondly, bison were overhunted to force Native Americans onto reservations. As Europeans began settling across the American West, they wanted to move Native Americans onto reservations. They saw that one way to do this was to kill off the bison, which the Native Americans depended on for food and shelter and tools. This led to a mass hunting period where millions of bison were killed, and again, often left to waste. Thirdly, bison were overhunted because they were used for target practice. Soldiers would practice shooting the bison, and again, their meat was often left to go to waste. At one point, people would even shoot bison from trains as they rode across the plains, of course, leaving the deceased animals and not making any use of their useful meat, hide, or bones. Now, all of these reasons are terrible, aren't they? Bison are an incredible provision from God, and they help many prairie animals and plants, along with people in so many different ways. And yet, people became greedy, and they lost sight of God's provision, and they overhunted these amazing animals to the point of near extinction for very wrong reasons. Thankfully, toward the end of the 1800s, some people began realizing that America was about to lose this incredible animal forever. They decided to take action, which helped the bison make their comeback. In the late 1800s and 1900s, many people began working to protect bison. Now, it's important to know that many different people and groups worked toward this effort. But I want to share the story of one man who played a very important role. His name was James Scotty Phillip. He is remembered as the man who saved the bison. Although remember, many people fought hard together and continue this work today. Scotty, as we will call him, was born in the United Kingdom and moved to America when he was 15 years old in the year 1874. Scotty ended up in the Dakota Territory to join the Black Hills Gold Rush, although he was not very successful as a gold miner. So he began doing some small jobs to save money. Have you ever done small jobs, maybe extra jobs around your house or lawn care for neighbors to save up money for something? What were you saving for? Well, Scotty was saving for cows. He and his wife, who was half Cheyenne, were given some treaty-protected Native American land, where they began ranching with their small herd of cows. Now, that small herd eventually grew to around 40,000 cows. Through all of this, Scotty had a growing concern about the dwindling number of bison across the American West. Scotty had heard about a man named Pete Dupree, who had caught 5 young bison. After Dupree passed away, Scotty purchased a small herd that Dupree had managed. Scotty took those bison and he created the first enclosed, protected pasture for bison along the Missouri River. This was in the year 1901. What a great beginning for bison in a new century. Scotty went on to appeal to the U.S. Congress to help protect bison, which resulted in him being given 3,500 acres of government land to help protect bison. He also worked alongside other ranchers in the United States and Canada to join forces to protect bison. After his death, part of his bison herd was purchased by Custer State Park in South Dakota, where I had the chance to see bison last year. Native American tribes have also worked very hard to help protect and restore bison populations. In 2014, 13 nations of American Indians from 8 separate reservations, along with the First Nations of Canada, signed the Buffalo Treaty as a commitment to work together to protect bison. Along with Scotty and many private ranchers and Native American tribes, naturalist William Hornaday worked to establish the American Bison Society in 1905. He worked alongside President Theodore Roosevelt in this effort. President Theodore Roosevelt was quite the naturalist, and he used his presidency to protect many wild lands and creatures, including bison. Today, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there are around 20,500 plains bison, which are bison kept on protected conservation lands. Additionally, there are around 420,000 bison kept in commercial herds. So that makes around 440,500 bison in America. But remember, they once numbered around 60 million. We have a long way to go, and most likely, bison will never roam the American plains like they once did. But I am grateful. I am so grateful to God and so many people who worked hard and wisely to protect bison. So now they are not extinct. However, they are considered ecologically extinct. Ecologically extinct means that although they still exist, they no longer play a very important role in their ecosystem, simply because there are not enough of them to fill the role that God intended. You might remember that we learned that bison are a keystone species, or very important for their ecosystem and the plants and the creatures around them. Bison are no longer able to fill that role because there are too few of them on the prairies. However, we can be grateful for the amazing efforts by so many that have resulted in saving this incredible and iconic species. This brings us back to the great question asked by Brooks. Would God forgive those who hunted bison to near extinction? You know, as hard as it is to hear about how people treated bison, hunting so many and letting them go to waste, I do believe, according to the Bible, that God would forgive those people if they asked him to. Now, you and I did not play a part in hunting bison during that time, but we also sin and do wrong things. Everyone does. Romans 3:23 says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. This makes me think about the Apostle Paul in the Bible. Paul made incredible missionary journeys, and he told so many people about the good news of Jesus. But did you know that Paul's name was not always Paul? Before he was Paul, he was Saul. And Saul didn't kill bison, but people. In fact, Saul killed Christians. And yet God, in his grace, got a hold of Saul's heart, and he was saved. This was such an incredible transformation that even his name was changed to Paul. He was made new in Christ. Paul tells his story in Acts chapter 22. Listen to verse 4. I persecuted the people who followed the way of Jesus, and some of them were even killed. I arrested men and women and put them in jail. God spoke to him, and Paul's life was changed. In verses 14 to 16, Paul was told, the God of our ancestors chose you long ago to know his plan, to see the righteous one, and to hear words from him. You will be his witness to all people, telling them about what you have seen and heard. Now why wait any longer? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, trusting in him to save you. Paul, who had been Saul and had persecuted and even killed Christians, he began traveling and telling everyone about God's love. God forgave Paul, even after he had done such terrible things. You see, listeners, God's grace and forgiveness is for everyone who receives him. If God forgave Paul, who once killed people, then I believe that he would forgive the people who thoughtlessly killed bison, so long as they asked for his forgiveness and turned to follow him. As long as we are alive on earth, no one is beyond God's forgiveness. Romans 10 verses 10 and 13 say, we believe with our hearts, and so we are made right with God. And we declare with our mouths that we believe, and so we are saved. As the scripture says, anyone who calls on the Lord will be saved. This is such wonderful news, listener. No matter what we have done, God's love and forgiveness is enough to save us. And as we follow him, he helps us become more like himself, leaving sinful ways behind and walking forth in freedom. All right, here is our listener question.
Hello, my name is Asher. I'm 7 years old. I live in South Carolina. And why do tigers have sharp claws?
That is a great question, Asher. Why do tigers have sharp claws? Tigers and cats, wild or domestic, have sharp claws that they use for many helpful purposes. They hunt using their claws to capture prey. But their claws not only help them hunt, they also use their claws to mark territory or to tell other cats or tigers that they were there. Have you ever seen names scratched into a bathroom stall door or a tree or a bench? Now, we definitely should not scratch anything into property or things that do not belong to us. But that is kind of like what tigers do. Just as you might read, "Mark was here," scratched onto a bench, tigers scratch trees and other things to make their presence known. When they do this, it also helps to sharpen their claws. Another way they keep their claws sharp is by retracting them or pulling them into their paws. Tigers also use their claws to climb. Although they don't climb very often, they are skilled at climbing, and one thing that helps them is their sharp claws. Thanks for the great question, Asher. Stay curious about God's wild and wonderful world. And listeners, if you are curious about something in nature, you can send in your questions at erinlynham.com/ask. And Nat Theo Club members, remember to click over at the end of this lesson to watch the bonus video and learn why bison are great athletes. Do you remember our trivia question? How much does an adult male bison weigh? An adult male bison can weigh up to 2,200 pounds. That is about 998 kilograms. And they can stand about 6 feet tall. That is a large animal. Now it's your turn to explore. Learn about another creature with a great comeback story. You could ask for help researching online or look at your library for books about endangered animals and how people have helped to protect them. If you would like to listen to another Nat Theo lesson about a creature that nearly went extinct, tune in to lesson 51 on the black-footed ferret. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this lesson, please take a moment to share it with a friend and subscribe, rate, and review Nat Theo wherever you listen. Until next time, keep exploring God's wild and wonderful world.
I think as parents, we assume that kids are going to just know the right way to do things. You have to teach them first and then train them by teaching them to do it over and over again until they actually get it.
Imagine trying to teach your child how to tie his shoes without the practice principle. If the practice principle is vital for teaching such morally neutral task as tying shoes, how much more important is it for training children in Christ-like character?
I speak to parents all the time who come up to me and they see what's happening, but they don't know what to do. And I just want to stand up and say, you can do this. Here is a solution.
This is Yvette Hampton, host of the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. Join us each week for a new episode as we offer encouragement and resources on biblical discipleship from popular speakers and authors, as well as parents just like you and me. Find out more at schoolhouserocked.com or listen anywhere you find your favorite podcast.